From Los Angeles, I'm Eddie Garcia, in for the vacationing Doug Stolhand. He is Jeff Ponder in St. Louis. Thanks for joining us for another edition of the Puck Podcast. It is Monday, March the 10th. This is our first period of a three-period podcast. The first period, which some of you are watching on YouTube, will recap the past week in the NHL on and off the ice. Our second period is our interview or special features segment. This week, Jeff and I will be giving our thoughts on a very interesting set of moves before the NHL trade deadline. And in our third period, it's our fan feedback segment where we read listener emails and we have an off-ice report where we talk about what's going on in our lives. You can find all three periods on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe, like, and get notified when the latest shows are out, whether it's this show, the Puck Podcast, our Puck Podcast Hockey Minute, preview and a recap of the day in the NHL. We've got our Puck Podcast reaction videos and sometimes a Puck Podcast watch party notifications as well. Again, I'm Eddie Garcia. I'm a Kings fan. I've worked in sports media for over 30 years. He's Jeff Ponder, a Blues fan, even though he's wearing a Kings jersey. He's trying to suck up to me. He's one of the hosts and founders of Let's Go Blues Radio podcast, and obviously they cover the St. Louis Blues. Happy to have him on the show while Doug is away on his cruise. Hey, Jeff, what's going on?
Oh, just love it. Just damn happy to be here. There, I got the curse word out. So no more today. That potty mouth Ponder has been retired.
Yeah, for those of you that only maybe watch the first period, in our podcast, in the third period, Jeff dropped an F-bomb. Apparently on his podcast, a bunch of sailors over there that just say anything that comes out of their mouths. We're a little bit classier here on the Puck Podcast, family friendly and all that, but so we'll see.
A bunch of sailors in St. Louis. That makes perfect sense.
So we'll see if Jeff is a man of his word, if he avoids swearing this show. I don't know. We'll see. He's last couple of times he has sworn. He has.
I'm pretty sure it's been every time I've been on the last 4 times.
Yeah,
which is
insane. This time you will be having to eat a bar of soap. If you do it again. So we'll see.
I thought that was Doug's kink.
That's old school. That's really old school right there.
I'll say, you mentioned the Kings jersey. First of all, this one is the reverse retro. This was the first reverse retro for them, correct?
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah, and it's got the Kings logo in the middle, with purple type. Jonathan Quick on the back. So I always say, first and foremost, yes, I am a Blues fan, but I am also a jersey fiend. And I think you and Doug would agree with that. I just love a random hockey jersey. And when I saw this one come out, I thought, man, that is a beautiful Kings jersey. And I was like, who do I get on it? And I'm like, I always like Jonathan Quick. I know as a Blues fan, I'm not supposed to, but just a solid goaltender, and always loved watching him play in LA. So yes, but I'm wearing my Blues hat, so still supporting the boys.
Yeah, I've got obviously a ton of Kings jerseys. I'm wearing my Anze Kopitar now. I have that style of jersey as well with Kopitar number 11 on there. I have a bunch of other jerseys too, though, and people have sent me jerseys over the years. Sometimes when I go to games and I have no rooting interest, I'll get a jersey and just wear that. I have like a gold Penguins jersey that I bought when I was in Pittsburgh. Nice. I wanted to get a Mario Lemieux, but it just kind of didn't work out. But we are lovers of the hockey sweaters here.
Does Doug still do the first goal thing when he goes to a visiting city? He always he used to get the first goal scored. He would buy that jersey. I know he's got like a Nystrom jersey.
He doesn't even go to many Ducks games anymore. So yeah, I mean it's not close to him. In his defense, it's probably, depending in Los Angeles, what time of day he goes, it's going to be well over an hour for him to get down there, even on a good day, maybe on a Sunday or something. So I get it, but I don't think he's gone to any away games in quite a while. So I don't know if he still has that tradition or not. I'll try and remember to ask him when he comes back.
There you go.
Next week. So we're in the final 20 or so games for each team in the NHL of the regular season. We are coming down to it. Another big week of action as the playoff picture is taking shape, and we will recap every game over the past 7 days. Again, we'll have all kinds of trade deadline reaction coming up in the second period, but for now, let's go back to last Monday and tell you about the 6 games on the schedule. And likely a possible first round playoff preview. We had the Panthers taking on the Lightning. Florida, the defending champs, get a 2-1 win to snap Tampa Bay's 8-game winning streak. Alexander Barkov scored both goals for Florida, numbers 15 and 16 for the captain. Goalie Sergei Bobrovsky, 28 saves in net. In his Panthers debut, recently acquired defenseman Seth Jones had no points, played 22 minutes, 56 seconds, was on the second pairing, and saw time on the Panthers penalty kill. In the loss for Tampa Bay, Braden Point scored his 32nd goal of the season. But Panthers Lightning, it's looking like that's going to happen. We'll look at the playoff matchups. We'll look at the standings coming up, but that will be quite the first round playoff matchup. If it does hold, we'll see. And both teams making some moves ahead of the deadline, which we'll talk about more in the second period.
Yeah, I watched this game and God, those teams are just so quick. And Florida they bring Florida as in the Panthers. They just bring so much heavy hitting and forechecking, and this was just a fun game. Both teams 29 shots on goal, so plenty of shots going their way. Goaltenders both doing a great job. You mentioned Barkov with the 2 goals in this game. Just a lightning player. That's a bad pun to use. Just a very quick player, quick strike player. And yeah, this was just a fun game to watch. And they've said what now? It's they've met 3 out of the last 5 seasons in the playoffs, something like that. So the rivalry is very real there in Florida. And give me an outdoor game between those 2 teams. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Well, they'll both be playing outdoors, but not against each other next
Right.
year, unfortunately. The Sharks stunned the Maple Leafs in Toronto with a 3-2 shootout win that snapped San Jose's 8-game losing skid. Sharks rallied down 2-0 with a pair of third-period goals. Tyler Toffoli had a goal in regulation, his 23rd, and in the shootout, and Fabian Zetterlund gets the shootout game winner for the Sharks. In the loss for Toronto, John Tavares and Matthew Nyes each scored their 24th goals of the season. Now, the Leafs did get a point with that shootout loss. That kept them tied with Florida for the Atlantic Division lead at the time, both teams with 79 points. Metropolitan Division leading Capitals edge the Senators 5-4 in a shootout. In the win for Washington, Tom Wilson gets his 27th, Connor McMichael his 22nd, and Dylan Strome had the only goal in the shootout. Cap star Alexander Ovechkin did not have a goal in this game, although he will be heard from later on in the week. At the time, he was 11 away from breaking Wayne Gretzky's all-time goal-scoring record with 21 games left in the regular season for Washington. In the loss for Ottawa, Shane Pinto, a pair of goals, numbers 13 and 14, and Brady Tkachuk added his 23rd of the season, but the Sens had dropped 6 of 7 at that point.
Senators are hanging on. I mean, every point obviously matters, but yeah, they're hanging on there, and a big goal by Brady Tkachuk to tie the game with I think it was just like it was about a minute left in the game to tie it to force overtime. So obviously you need that point, but yeah, for them, that they were really wanting that second point in overtime, but again, you take what you can get.
Rangers shut out the Islanders 4-0 behind 21 saves from Igor Shesterkin. Will Cooley scored his 17th, JT Miller his 16th, and Artemi Panarin added an empty netter for his 25th of the year. Rangers had won 4 of 5, and at that time were tied with the Red Wings and Blue Jackets for the final wildcard spot in the East, each team with 66 points. So obviously things very tight in the East as far as the wildcard spot. And the Canadiens in the mix as well. They won their 5th straight, beating the Sabres 4-3 in overtime on a goal from defenseman Mike Matheson. This is Montreal's getting the victory. They jumped out to a 3-0 lead in this one. Cole Caulfield gets his 30th. Nick Suzuki is 19th. Buffalo did storm back with 3 straight goals to tie it. Tage Thompson is 29th. Alex Tuch is 23rd. Canadiens were 1 point out of the final wildcard spot in the East with that overtime victory.
2 points from Yuri Slafkovsky, who I think is slowly starting to become the player that Montreal expected when they drafted him. He's not really been. I mean, right now he's got 11 goals, 24 assists in 60 games. Last year, 50 points in 82 games. I think he's starting to round out, and obviously for Montreal, that is going to be huge as they continue to make. I don't know if they make the playoffs this year, but I think with the way they're building their team and been able to kind of center around guys like Slafkovsky, this team could be on the rise and might be a playoff team next season.
And the Blackhawks embarrassed my Kings 5-1 in his Chicago debut. Newly acquired goalie Spencer Knight looked fantastic with 41 saves, Ryan Donato scored his 22nd goal of the year, and the Kings had lost 4 in a row at that point. I said last week I'm not a believer necessarily in Spencer Knight, but I will say I got a up close and personal look at that performance, and at least for that game, he was really good.
I watched this game too. Yeah, he was fantastic. How many saves did he have? 41, I
41.
think.
Yep.
Yeah,
41.
unbelievable. Ryan Donato scoring his 22nd, which he's been electric this year for Chicago. Again, they're not in the same path, I think, as Montreal, but we're starting to see this team come together a little bit more. Ryan Donato is looking great for them. Been a big fit. They thought maybe he'd be a trade deadline guy, but spoiler alert, Chicago held on to him. I think that was the right move. Guy that can play with Bedard. And again, yeah, Spencer Knight, 2 games so far. We'll talk about his next game, but he's looked pretty good. And I'll say my Doug Stolhand weirdness with how he's like, remembers Chris Chelios as an Atlanta Thrasher. My thing that I love is when goalies get traded and they have like to wear their old pads.
Yeah.
And so I didn't watch the second game. I don't know if he corrected it by then, but Spencer Knight was still wearing his Panthers helmet, his Panthers pads, and just in a Blackhawks jersey. I love that. Somebody shared one to Tim Thomas wearing all red pads with the Dallas Stars when he played for them, and he just looked like a giant Christmas tree. So I love that kind of thing. It just makes the sport so much more fun when that kind of thing happens.
All right, moving on to Tuesday. We had 10 games, and the Stars beat the Devils 4-3 on defenseman Thomas Harley's goal with 5 seconds left in regulation. Rope Hint scored his 25th, Wyatt Johnston his 22nd. In the loss for New Jersey, Nico Hischier scored scored his 26th of the year. However, New Jersey would not have star Jack Hughes, and they found out that he is going to miss the rest of the season. We talked about it on last week's show. The final game on Sunday, it ended right before we started recording the show. He went into the boards hard in Vegas, and it looked bad. We were hoping for the best. Unfortunately for New Jersey, it's the worst. He's done for the year. It's a huge, huge blow for the Devils, and you wondered how that would maybe affect what they did or didn't do at the trade deadline.
The calendar turn for the Devils has not been good. Since 2025 hit, they have fallen, and now you look at Jack Hughes being taken out, and that is obviously a huge blow. They went out and again, we'll talk about trade deadline in a bit. They did make a move, but you can't replace a Jack Hughes, especially the trade deadline. Just an absolute bummer for Devils fans out there. And Stars took advantage, credit to them. But got to think, man, that was the question that I had somebody asking me is, what do you do if you're the New Jersey Devils? You've had a rough 2025. Jack Hughes, your star, is down. Do you still go for it? And I mean, obviously, I think the answer is yes, you have to. But I mean, realistically, can this team get to a Stanley Cup final without Jack Hughes leading the offense? Unfortunately, the answer is probably no.
Hurricanes edge the Red Wings in Detroit 2-1. Jordan Staal gets the game winner for Carolina, while Frederik Andersen had 24 saves in net. Lightning beat the Blue Jackets 6-2. Jake Gensel, 2 goals, numbers 28 and 29. Victor Hedman, 2 goals, numbers 10 and 11. And Nikita Kucherov added his 28th of the year. Tampa Bay moved to 10-1-1 in its last 12 games. In the loss for Columbus, defenseman Zach Werenski had 2 goals, numbers 19 and 20. Looking like a 2-man race for the Norris now, with Quinn Hughes being banged up and missing time. So Zach Werenski, Cale Makar, likely a 1-2 race there for the Norris Trophy this year, I would think.
Yep, and I'll say, man, the Jake Gensel has been such an awesome addition for the Lightning. They basically took him and said, "Move on, Steven Stamkos." And judging by Stamkos's year in Nashville and Jake Gensel's year in Tampa, as long as he stays healthy, he's going to be a 30-goal scorer this year. Just looks like a brilliant move by the Lightning.
Predators knocked off the Bruins in Boston 6-3. Ryan O'Reilly, a pair of goals, numbers 15 and 16. Steven Stamkos, who you mentioned, gets his 18th. That was just Nashville's 7th road win all season. We'll talk more about the Bruins in the second period, but you got to wonder if this game didn't decide for GM Don Sweeney that maybe we should be a seller.
Yeah, that's both those teams. Such a disappointment this year. When I saw this game was on, I thought, Oh, ooh, both those fan bases have really struggled this year. So, yeah, we'll talk about what they both did at the deadline, but not looking good for either franchise.
Flames started strong, ended up rolling over the Flyers in Philadelphia 6-3. Connor Zary had 2 goals. Two of the Flames' first 3 goals in the first period as well. Numbers 11 and 12 for him. Nazem Kadri added his 22nd of the year.
And
Ducks
this
not go ahead.
Kuzmenko guy, he scores a goal for Philadelphia. That's odd.
Yeah, we'll not talk about him later. The Ducks knocked off the Oilers 6-2. Anaheim used a 4-goal opening period to get the win. Mason McTavish had 2 goals, numbers 15 and 16. Leo Carlson gets his 14th. In the loss, Leon Draisaitl scored his NHL leading 45th. Connor McDavid had his 23rd, but at that point, the Oilers had lost 6 of 7.
Not a good look going into the trade deadline. You got to think that GM Stan Bowman's thinking, oh, do I let this ride? Are they going to figure it out? And yeah, to get almost boat raced by the Anaheim Ducks, not something you want to see as an Oilers fan.
And one of those rare games where I was actually rooting for the Ducks, and good for them. The Islanders beat the Jets 3-2 behind a couple of players whose names have been coming up in trade rumors. Brock Nelson and Kyle Palmieri each scored their 20th goals of the season. This would end up being the final game for Brock Nelson with the Islanders. He had spent all 12 of his NHL seasons there. We'll talk about where he went coming up in the second period of our podcast.
What happened?
You'll have to stick around. Have to stick around and find out.
Did he?
No, he did not leave the country. It was possible, but he did not in this case. The Avalanche down the Penguins 4-1. Arturi Lehkonen had a pair of goals, numbers 25 and 26, while Scott Wedgwood made 32 saves in net for Colorado. Wild beat the Kraken. No, you got to be faster than that, Jeff.
Sorry, I'm so slow.
You got to be ready.
Raquel was a name that came up a ton around the trade deadline. He scores in this game, his 29th. So again, another name to keep in mind as we get to the trade deadline talk.
Wild beat the Kraken in Seattle 4-3. Matt Zuccarello and Frederick Gaudreau each had their 14th goals of the season for Minnesota. Sharks score 4 in the third, rally past the Sabres 6-2 in Buffalo. Rookie Macklin Celebrini gets his 19th. Tyler Toffoli is 24th. In a loss for the Sabres, Tage Thompson gets his 30th of the season. On a Wednesday, where we had 5 games on the schedule, and matchup of the night was in Las Vegas, where the Golden Knights knock off the Maple Leafs 5-2. Vegas jumping out to a 3-0 lead in the first period. They led 5-0 at one point. Tomas Hertl gets his 24th. Jack Eichel his 20th. In the loss for Toronto, Austin Matthews scored his 23rd. Mitch Marner his 19th. Vegas opened up a 6-point lead on Edmonton atop the Pacific at that point.
Mitch Marner, we found out later, and I don't know if you have it in your notes. He is also somebody whose name apparently was coming up at the trade deadline. So, again, we'll talk about that later.
Capitals beat the Rangers in New York 3-2 in overtime. Tom Wilson's 28th of the year in sudden death was your game winner. And Alexander Ovechkin scored his 32nd goal of the season. Prepare to be wowed, Jeff, with the graphic. That's number 885 for the Great Eight. And that put him 10 away from breaking Wayne Gretzky's all-time goal-scoring record with 20 games left in the regular season at that point. In the loss for the Rangers, Artemi Panarin scored his 26th. And with the point, New York did move into a tie for the final wildcard spot in the East. But Ovechkin, another goal, and we may hear from him later as well.
I'm guessing that when you're not here, we probably don't get those amazing graphics. Is that correct?
I'm always here, Jeff. I don't go anywhere.
Doesn't seem right. I'm pretty sure I've done a couple shows with Doug.
I don't know. He's the one who always leaves. I'm always here.
Okay, got it.
Right. Senators got by the Blackhawks in Chicago 4-3 in overtime to move into the final wildcard spot in the East. Both Ottawa and New York had 67 points at that point. Tim Stützle scored the overtime game winner, a deflection off his skate for his 20th of the season. Josh Norris added his 20th, and Brady Tkachuk gets his 24th. In the loss for Chicago, Ryan Donato scored his 23rd of the season. Canucks got by the Ducks 3-2. Vancouver scoring all 3 of their goals in the second period. Jake DeBrusk his 22nd. Defenseman Carson Soucy gets the game winner. Ducks goalie John Gibson, a player that was talked about maybe being moved at the deadline, ended up leaving in the second period with an injury after a collision with Vancouver's Drew O'Connor. Canucks moved into a tie with Calgary for the final wildcard spot in the West. At that point, both with 67 points.
In this game, Yeah, you mentioned John Gibson getting hurt. His name is always coming up at the trade deadline, right? It seems like every year it's where will John Gibson go? Is he going to
Yeah.
Pittsburgh?
And he
And
never
it's like
goes anywhere.
he never goes anywhere. He's staying in SoCal.
And the Blues edge the Kings 3-2 in a shootout. Boo, boo.
Yeah.
LA suffering their fifth straight loss. Robert Thomas scored his 17th. He had a goal in the shootout as well. And Jake Neighbors gets his 16th and a goal in the shootout as well. St. Louis extending its point streak to 11 games and moved 1 point out of the final wildcard spot in the West. We still have one more game between our two teams to recap, but I'll be honest with you, Jeff. I've been pretty impressed. The Kings and Blues have played each other. Apparently, they knew about you guest hosting. So the Kings and Blues will have played each other 3 times in 8 days,
Yeah.
including back-to-back games in LA. Very weird, but
Mhm.
obviously my first chance to see your Blues. I know they're probably playing some of their better hockey of the season right now, but I've been impressed with your team. I have.
Yeah, again, we'll talk about trade deadline. Braden Shen, captain of the Blues, his name came up a ton, and yeah, we'll talk about that later. But yeah, something I loved that Doug Armstrong, actually Jordan Binnington, I think said it too. That basically this team is showing, don't trade anyone, keep us together. We are going to make the playoffs, and you just love that confidence, that swagger that the Blues can have. I mean, they're a team that really, I mean, early in the year, a lot of the prognosticators were saying, they're going to be below the Blackhawks in the standings, which I thought was absolutely insane. But, we were seeing some of that. So to see this team still battling, and you mentioned, I think at this point with this win, I think they were 2 points out of the playoffs, which is
One.
one point. Okay, so 1 point out. And the Kings are a darn good team. Quentin Byfield, by the way, that kid, he scares me. Every time he gets the puck, he is so fast. And he's one of those guys that can fire the puck in stride, which is really hard to do for those of you who don't play hockey. I know Eddie does it every game. Um, you know, has crazy speed up the middle and fires just absolute
Okay.
clappers from
All right.
the
Yes.
hash marks. But and Quentin Byfield's been watching Eddie Garcia tape because that's the kind of thing he does. But no, in all seriousness, heck of a hockey player. Excited to see where his future goes. Glad he's not in the Central Division. But yeah, the Kings playing good hockey too, and the Blues just outmatching them. 30 shots on goal in this game, and you mentioned the shootout winner, just a great goal by Robert Thomas. So it's been a lot of fun, and it feels like a playoff series, right? 3 games in 8 days. That's insane to see. And this last game last night, I thought was very exciting as well because these teams are very familiar with each other, but now they won't see each other the rest of the season.
And Colton Parayko, unfortunately, got hurt in this game. Very weird injury. He just kind of blew a tire in overtime. It led to a breakaway for the Kings. Unfortunately, for LA, they didn't score. But yeah, his leg bent underneath him, and hoping he's going to be back for maybe the playoffs if that happens, or is he done for the rest of the year? Do you know?
So they're saying 6 weeks, and that would pretty much put it right at the start of the playoffs that he would probably be ready. So we'll see. There was some speculation that they did this to free up salary space for the trade deadline. Obviously, that was not the case. Spoiler alert: Blues didn't make any moves, so that was not the case. But yeah, I think he will be ready for the playoffs, and this team is showing again. They've had to play Ryan Suter way more this year than I think they were planning, and he's been spectacular. Tyler Tucker, a 7th-round pick, has stepped in and played well for him. So they've had to pivot. But since this injury, Blues are 1-0-1. So clearly they're doing something right.
Well, we'll see if they can keep it going the rest of the way without their top defender because it's going to be close.
It is. Yep.
Let's move on to Thursday where we had 9 games and the Panthers blank the Blue Jackets 3-0. Just 16 saves from Sergei Bobrovsky and net. Sam Reinhart gets his 32nd of the year in the opening period. That was all the offense the defending champs would need. For Bobrovsky, that was career win number 423, moving him into a tie for 10th on the all-time list with Hall of Famer Tony Esposito. Bobrovsky doing it in 144 fewer games.
Columbus right now sitting in a playoff spot, and I need to see more fight from them. I feel like down the stretch, 16 shots on goal in this game, and I watched some of this one, and they just did not threaten. I just feel like they were not pushing or I guess stretching the envelope, um, trying to get traffic in front. And again, you're facing the defending champs. The Panthers are obviously a heck of a hockey team, but would like to see more from Columbus here down the stretch.
Utah Hockey Club beat the Red Wings in Detroit 4-2. Utah closing out the game with 3 unanswered goals to get the win. Dylan Gunther gets his 23rd. Kevin Stenlund gets the game winner. In the loss for Detroit, Dylan Larkin scores his 25th, but that's 4 straight losses for the Red Wings. Stars down the Flames, 3-2 in overtime. Jason Robertson's 27th of the year was the winner. His 26th of the year, tied it in the third period. And Wyatt Johnson added his 23rd of the season for Dallas.
Wyatt Johnston is a guy, and again, we'll talk about him, I think, coming up. But he's another electric player that just seems like Dallas keeps churning out these gifted offensive players. Rope Hintz, obviously, is a name. We'll talk about a move they made, but they're scary. They're a scary team. I would not want to face them in the first round.
Well, I picked him at the beginning of the year to win, and then I picked him when we redid our picks. And I'll say what they did at the trade deadline did nothing to dissuade my opinion of that. However, first round playoff matchup is going to be very interesting, it appears. We'll talk about that later.
Yes.
Lightning edge the Sabres, 6-5. Jake Gensel, a hat trick for Tampa Bay, 30, 31, and 32 goals now at that point for him. Oliver Bjorkstrand, first game with Tampa Bay, gets the game winner, his 17th of the season. And Tampa Bay moved to 11-1-1 in its last 13. In the loss, Tage Thompson, another goal, is 31st. Alex Tuck, his 24th. Hurricanes edge the Bruins 3-2 in what would be the last game in Carolina for Mikko Rantanen. Seth Jarvis scored the game winner with 18.9 seconds left in regulation, his 24th of the season. Sebastian Aho added his 24th as well. And the loss for Boston, Morgan Geekie had a pair of goals, numbers 21 and 22. But for Mikko Rantanen, 13 games in Carolina, and he finished with 2 goals and 4 assists for 6 points.
Wonderful stat line. I mean, people in Carolina, how are you going to remember the Mikko Rantanen era? Not well is the answer. Did not look good with the Hurricanes. Obviously, the team he gets traded to is hoping that there will be a change, as they did lock him up as well. So
there will be, because he's actually going to try now.
yes, we'll see. Well, I mean, you got to face it. The knock on him has been, can he be the same player that he was with McKinnon? And right now, we are seeing that he is not the same player without McKinnon. Now, he's obviously going to have some firepower in his new team, but he's got to figure it out, because right now it's a bad stigma to be carrying around with him.
Well, we'll talk about more in the second period, but I think he has figured it out. I think he actually wants to try now, so I think he'll be pretty good in Dallas. We'll talk about in the second period.
Spoiler alert.
The Jets took care of the Flyers in Philadelphia 4-1 to become the first team in the NHL to reach 90 points on the season. Mark Scheifele gets his 35th of the year, Kyle Connor his 32nd, and Nikolai Ehlers his 20th. Eric Comrie in net for this one, 21 saves. Philadelphia's lone goal came from rookie Matvei Michkov, his 20th of the season.
And I will tell you, as somebody who is in tune with a lot of Jets fans, the sentiment is, this is great, but first round exit. And for their sake, I hope they're wrong, but that's kind of been the MO with the Jets. So we'll see if this is the year they get over the hump.
And the Predators beat the Kraken 5-3. Philip Forsberg, 2 goals, numbers 23 and 24. In the loss, Mikey Eyssimont, just acquired in a trade from Tampa Bay, gets his first goal with Seattle. All right, let's move on to Friday. Just 6 games on the schedule. Feels like there should be none, because it is trade deadline day.
I agree.
And that's just such a huge day. You would think that they might take the day off for that, but they don't. And speaking of the Jets, they roll over the Devils in New Jersey 6-1. Winnipeg had 6 different goal scorers. Kyle Connor, his 33rd. Nikolai Ehlers, his 21st. Connor Hellebuyck back in net, 22 saves for his NHL leading 37th win of the year. In the loss for the Devils, Jacob Markstrom allowed 6 goals on 35 shots. Capitals beat the Red Wings 5-2, down 2-1 in the third. Washington scored 4 unanswered goals to pull away. Alexi Protas had 2 of them, numbers 24 and 25. Tom Wilson gets his 29th. In the loss for Detroit, Dylan Larkin scored again his 26, but that's 5 losses in a row at that point for the Red Wings. No goals for Alexander Ovechkin at that point, still 10 away from Gretzky with 19 games left in the regular season.
No graphic.
No graphic for that, no.
Mm-mm.
Canucks beat the Wild 3-1. Kiefer Sherwood scored the game winner. Elias Pettersson had a goal, his 12th of the year. That snapped a 15-game scoring drought. And Vancouver goalie Kevin Lankinen, 37 saves in net. Canucks moved 1 point up on Calgary for the final wildcard spot in the West with that win.
My co-host, one of my co-hosts over at Let's Go Blues Radio, smash that subscribe button. Bill Day is kind of a goalie guru and goalie himself, and he brought up that in the Four Nations, the player that surprised him the most was Kevin Lankinen, and I think I agree with that. He played so well for he was on Finland, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, he played really well down the stretch. They played so obviously some damn good teams in US. I mean, well, all of them, US, Sweden, and Canada. And since then, he's looking pretty good for Vancouver too. I mean, obviously they're still dealing with the injuries to Thatcher Demko, but Kevin Lankinen has stepped in and played very good hockey for them.
I would say he's been their MVP. He's saved the day. With Thatcher Demko being in and out of the lineup, he's been very good for them. So, and it earned him a contract. So,
yes, it did.
He deserves it. Golden Knights knocked off the Penguins 4-0 behind 22 saves from Ilya Sorokin. Or excuse me, Ilya Samsonov in net for the Golden Knights. Ivan Barbashev gets his 19th, Mark Stone his 17th, and Riley Smith made his return to Vegas, an original Golden Knight and a Stanley Cup winner, recently traded back to Las Vegas from the New York Rangers. Blues got by the Ducks 4-3. St. Louis captain Braden Shen, obviously not traded at the deadline. 2 goals, numbers 13 and 14, including the game winner in the third period. Now, again, we'll talk about this more in the second period, and who knows, how much the tires were kicked. But as I said, I've been impressed with the way your Blues have been playing, and to trade your captain at the deadline when you're competing for a playoff spot, that would be difficult. I know you could argue that there's a team in Massachusetts that kind of did that, but I would say, to me, different circumstances, different expectations. That would have been rough to trade Braden Shen before the deadline with the way the team's been playing.
Well, and again, I mentioned earlier, Armstrong, Binnington, I think Shen has even come out in the media and said that, we're a playoff team. We're going to make the playoffs. And yeah, that would be such the rumors were that Doug Armstrong was asking for a king's ransom for Braden Shen, which
a lot of GMs were.
Right. Why not? You got to get the best value. And if you're going to trade your captain, who's just honestly, and from his time in LA, he is a great locker room guy. And I will say, I think that is overstated a lot with some players, but Braden Shen, I had people telling me with the Blues organization that he was the captain long before he was actually the captain. Like he was basically the captain leading them through the 2019 playoff run. So, and that does not surprise me at all. So yeah, him being able to step in and score a big goal here. Also, another acquisition the Blues had, Cam Fowler earlier this year. 2 assists in his first game back in Anaheim as not as obviously as a Duck. So he looked very good in this game. He unfortunately had to miss the game Saturday for the birth of his second child, I believe.
Not unfortunate for his family, but yes, unfortunate for the team.
Unfortunately for the Blues,
which is all you care about. Yeah,
that is all I care about. No, I was very happy that, and apparently I thought his family still lived in Anaheim. Apparently they did just move them to St. Louis, so he had to go home to St. Louis for that, which
ironic, yeah. If they would,
that's what I thought. I'm like, why not just stay in Anaheim? Like, come on. But yeah, a very nice game for the Blues, and Mason Marchment scored. Thought he scored with no time on the clock, right at the buzzer, and it was, you got to be kidding me, because the Blues had a 4-2 lead. They gave up a goal late, and then that happened. Luckily, time was expired, and the Blues ended up skating away with this one with a 4-3 win.
And one more game on Friday. The Blackhawks down the Utah Hockey Club 4-2 in overtime. Connor Bedard gets the OT game winner, his 17th of the year. In the loss for Utah, Clayton Keller gets his 23rd of the season. On
So I
to
think
Saturday. Yes.
we can officially say this week at least, Spencer Knight, fantastic in goal for the Chicago Blackhawks. 2 wins, 1.95 GAA in those games with a 951 save percentage, and 81 shots against. And how many goals against? Why is it not showing? Doesn't matter. He's playing great.
That would be 3.
Three goals against. Yep. And he has looked great. So Chicago right now, loving that trade. We'll see if that continues. But obviously those numbers are very impressive. I doubt he'll keep those up, but
I would doubt
very
that
good
well,
to start as Chicago Blackhawk.
No, good for him. Like I said, if he turns out to be the goalie of the future, that trade actually looks pretty good for Chicago. But I'm still skeptical. I've got to see a lot more. We'll see.
I don't blame you. It's only 2 games. I'm not going to claim victory on this one yet.
You can. I mean, talk while you can is a pretty good philosophy.
I'm not that guy. Who do I look like? Doug Strollhand?
What's his name?
Did I just call him Doug Strollhand?
Strollhand. Old Strollhand.
Good old Strollhand.
We had 10 games on Saturday. That's a pretty light card for a Saturday, but the Oilers beat the Stars 5-4 in a very nice matchup. Who knows? Maybe a Western Conference Finals preview. Zach Hyman, 2 goals for Edmonton, 21 and 22. Connor McDavid is 24th. Oilers had a 5-1 lead heading into the third before holding off a late rally from Dallas. In his Stars debut, Mikko Rantanen scored a goal, his 28th. He had an assist as well. Wyatt Johnston added his 24th. By the way, Johnston also getting a contract extension with the team on deadline day, 5 years, $42 million. The 21-year-old will make $8.4 million per season. Not bad. Not bad.
Unbelievable that again, the talent that Dallas is churning out. Wyatt Johnston, Rope Hintz, another guy that comes to mind. Obviously, Jason Robertson. It's an embarrassment of riches in Dallas right now with their offense. And clearly they got the back end too. I mean, Thomas Harley's a great guy who stepped in for them. Jake Ottinger is probably my second favorite goalie in the NHL right now. And I know that's blasphemous as a Blues fan, but love his game. They're rolling. That's a team, again, that I would not want to face in the playoffs.
Avalanche down the Maple Leafs 7-4. Valeri Nichushkin had a hat trick for Colorado. Goals 13, 14, and 15. Nathan McKinnon had 2 goals, numbers 26 and 27. He is the first player in the NHL this season to hit the 100-point mark with those 2 goals. And Brock Nelson made his Avalanche debut, had an assist in that victory.
The Avalanche just look like a different team with Nichushkin.
They are.
Well, yeah.
No.
They are, but
that was almost like another ad with him coming back from injury, and hopefully, he's right with all of his stuff off the ice. But no, he's a force when he's going right for sure.
Yep, and yeah, that's a team that they're going to get that secondary scoring from guys like him, and it's weird to say secondary scoring from Nichushkin, but again, when you got guys like Cale Makar and Nathan McKinnon and Martin Necas, I mean. He's basically your secondary scoring, and he's proven before to be super efficient in the playoffs as well.
Senators rallied for a big win over the Rangers, 4-3 in overtime. Brady Tkachuk scored twice, goals 25 and 26, including the overtime game winner. Sens were down 3-1, scored the final 3 goals of the game, 2 in the third to tie it, and then the overtime game winner. In the loss for the Rangers, Artemi Panarin gets his 22nd of the season. That win put Ottawa into the number 1 wildcard spot in the East. Dylan Cousins, trade deadline pickup, had an assist in his Ottawa debut.
That, as long as he stays healthy, Dylan Cousins is going to be a huge addition for the Ottawa Senators. It's just a matter of staying healthy for him.
Panthers won their 6th straight, shutting out the Sabres 4-0 behind 21 saves from Vitek Vanacek, who was just picked up in a trade with the Sharks. I think he was the only goalie traded in and around the deadline. That was his first start with the Panthers, and pretty nice start. He gets the shutout, his first of the season. Buffalo had dropped 6 in a row at that point. Kings edge the Blues 2-1 in overtime on Quentin Byfield's 13th goal of the season. Darcy Kemper, 19 saves in net as the Kings improved to 23-4 on home ice this season.
For those of you who are maybe listen to Let's Go Blues Radio too, we complain about the Blues and they've never, ever, ever understood how goaltending works. There's a reason that Jordan Binnington already has the franchise lead in wins because uh, they cannot figure out goaltending, and they do this scheduled starts thing where it's like 2 games for Binnington, 1 game for Hofer. That's how they've done it all year. Doesn't make any sense to me. To me, it does not allow goalies to get hot. And somebody made a comment. I said, "Man, you got to play Binnington against the Kings, right? Like you play Hofer against the Ducks and you play Binnington against the Kings." And somebody on social media was like, "Well, you can't expect your goalie to get 3 wins against one team." And I'm like, "What?" And a bunch of people chimed in and were like, "Yeah, you got to play your backup against the team for the 3rd game because there's no way he gets 3 wins." And I'm like, "Have you ever watched a playoff game? Like clearly this is what what starting goalies do." So I just don't understand that, and that's why Hofer played in this game. And not that Hofer played bad. I just think that is such a weird, and apparently that is like an adopted thought across the NHL now. Like, well,
Hmm.
if we get 3 games in that short amount of time, we got to play the backup in one of them.
That
No,
sounds
you
like
don't.
that sounds like a stupid baseball thing where it's like third time through the order, can't let him see the guy three times. You got to put another pitcher in there.
Right. Yeah, it just doesn't make any sense to me. I'm like, goalies, like, I get that, oh, now they got tape on them, which I think is a silly thought too, but it's like, no, the
Yeah, because
goalies,
that's new.
yeah, like goalies know these players. They know the teams. They study the tape themselves. Like, you're telling me Jordan Binnington couldn't have won this game? Again, Hofer played fine. It's just I don't understand that logic.
The Bruins, a day after making a bunch of major trades, shipping out their captain as well, shocked the Red Hot Lightning 4-0. Jeremy Swayman, 26 saves in net in the shutout. Cole Kepke had a pair of goals, numbers 8 and 9 for Boston.
Was it Zadorov that's no, I don't think it was Zadorov. Might have been Kastelik, however you say his name. Um, did you see this game at all, by the way?
Not a
So
second.
there was a goal. It was their second goal, I believe, that
Oh, was
Boston they
oh was this the one from center ice or whatever?
yeah, he just
Yeah,
shot
okay.
it in,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
I don't know. I guess Vasilevsky thought he was gonna rim it around the boards, and he just shot it right into an empty net. And Vasilevsky was just standing there, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" Like, not to knock one of the greatest goalies to ever play the game, but what are you doing, Vasilevsky? That made no sense. Just a brain fart, I guess, huh?
I guess so. It happens every once in a while.
Mhm.
Islanders down the Sharks 4-2 in San Jose. Anders Lee, not Andre Lee, who I've been calling him apparently. Anders Lee is 24th of the season. Kraken beat the Flyers in Philadelphia 4-1. Matty Beniers, his 15th of the year. Brandon Montour, his 13th. Philip Grubauer called back up after being sent down to the minors, 23 saves in net. And the loss for Philadelphia, Owen Tippett gets his 19th. And the Predators down the Blackhawks 3-2 in overtime. Steven Stamkos, all 3 goals for Nashville for the hat trick, 19, 20, and 21 on the season. His 14th career hat trick. And we wrap it up on Sunday with 8 games, including the Capitals beating the Kraken 4-2. Connor McMichael gets his 23rd, Dylan Strome his 19th, and Alexander Ovechkin into an empty net. He is the king of the empty net goals for goal number 33 on the season and goal number 866. He's now 9 away, single digits from breaking Wayne Gretzky's all-time goal scoring record with 18 regular season games left to go. Also picking up career point number 1,600 as well. That is good enough for 11th on the all-time points list. But again, the great 8 with 18 games to go, 9 away. It's coming down to the wire. I still think he's going to have a couple of multiple goal games to get it, but we shall see. Going to be
Well,
close.
it's a weird spot for I think for the Capitals too, because I really do think for the last couple of years it's been just feed Ovechkin so we can get more goals. This year, clearly, they've got other goals in mind. I mean, this is a good team that could make some real noise in the playoffs. So it's like, what's your priority as a forward on the Capitals? Is it, well, I need to try and get Ovechkin open so he can break the record, or is it we got to win some games? And I think it is more the latter. And it's just it's probably an odd feeling for everyone else in the locker room. Like they want to see their teammate do it. They want to have the big celebration moment this season, but at the same time, you can't fall into bad habits, and you got to still play the way you've played all season, and that's a team game. So we'll see. It's again, I think he does it, but if not, he'll be back next season and he'll do it then. It's just a matter
I
of
want him to do it now. I don't want to wait.
I know, and that's how I feel too. Because I'm like, again, thinking. I think I said this last week. Thinking of him, if you are one goal away from tying it, or even if you tie it and don't break it, you don't want to have to go all summer thinking about it. I mean, he wants to get this done now.
And look, the Caps have a big lead in the division. They're clearly going to win the division. I know they want to be playing well going into the playoffs, and I'm sure that's what's on their mind, not the record. But
Right.
I think it keeps them a little more engaged in it.
Yeah.
They're not going to be playing meaningful games really down the stretch. So, and they've got a sizable lead for home ice in the Eastern Conference playoffs as
Yep.
well. So they're going to be at home throughout the Eastern Conference finals. They may not get home ice in the Stanley Cup final, depending on who makes it out of the West. But I think this helps them. I think this keeps them a little more engaged and a little more motivated than maybe they wouldn't be otherwise. I definitely don't think it's a distraction for them.
Well, good. Okay. Well, if you're right, I hope you're right for their sake.
I'm always right. The Hurricanes beat the Jets 4-2 in his Carolina debut. Logan Stankoven, part of the Mikko Rantanen trade, scored a goal, his 10th. Mark Jankowski, who came over from Nashville in a much less publicized trade, had 2 goals in his Canes debut, numbers 5 and 6. Seth Jarvis gets his 25th. Connor Hellebuck did take the loss in this one, just his 9th regulation loss on the season. Blue Jackets roll over the Rangers in New York 7-3. Adam Fantilli with the hat trick for Columbus, goals 19, 20, and 21. Kent Johnson gets his 21st as well. And Rangers goalie Jonathan Quick, who Jeff's wearing his jersey, allowed 7 goals on 28 shots.
I just said, and I'll say, I did not even know the final of this game until right now. So I did not see this game. But I said earlier I want to see more fight out of the Blue Jackets. Sounds like we got it in this game. 28 shots on goal, 7 goals on the New York Rangers, who are no slouch. So good to see the Blue Jackets coming out and getting a big win here.
The Kings outscored the Pacific Division leading Golden Knights for a 6-5 win in Vegas. LA had 6 different goal scorers. Adrian Kempe gets his 27th. Warren Fogle his 18th. In the loss for Vegas, Tomas Hertl did have a hat trick, goals 25, 26, and 27, but LA took 3 of 4 in the head-to-head series against Vegas this season. Kings don't win too many shootouts, so that was, I'll say it was fun. It was fun, but yeah, Vegas made it interesting there at the end.
They always do.
Yeah. Stars down the Canucks 4-1 in Vancouver. Mikko Rantanen scored into an empty net for his 2nd goal in as many games, 29 on the season. He now has as many goals with the Stars as he did with Carolina. Jason Robertson gets his 28th, and Casey DeSmith in net, 22 saves in the victory.
I guess he is wanting to play now. So good call,
Yeah,
King
looks like
Eddie.
it. Looks like it. Penguins handle the Wild 3-1 in Minnesota. Sidney Crosby, 2 goals, 20 and 21. Tristan Jarry back up with the team from the minors. He gets his 29 saves in the victory in net. Devils beat the Flyers. Devils beat the Flyers 3-1. Cody Glass in his New Jersey debut had a goal. Dawson Mercer scores his 15th, and Jake Allen 23 saves in net.
We will rally around Cody Glass and play good hockey.
Yes.
That's what Devils are thinking.
That's right, Dick Vermeil. And the Ducks down the Islanders 4-1. Sam Colangelo scored 2 goals for Anaheim, goals 6 and 7, and Mason McTavish added his 17th in the win.
I think you are mispronouncing his name. I believe it's Sam Golangelo.
Not with just 7 goals on the season, I would say. He needs to get about 20 more to earn
that was
the
the
like
social media post I saw from the Ducks tonight was Sam Golangelo, and I thought 7 goals, huh? That's all right. Okay, that's where we're going with that. Sounds good.
So let us check out the standings after another week of hockey action. We will start in the East and in the Metropolitan Division. We talked about them earlier, but the Washington Capitals with a sizable lead atop the division, 92 points, a record of 42, 14, and 8. They've got a 12-point lead over the Carolina Hurricanes. New Jersey sitting in 3rd place with 74 points. They are 6 points back of Carolina. Then you've got Columbus has hit 70 points. The Rangers have 68, Islanders with 65, and the Flyers with 62. I would say right now, looking at these teams, Washington obviously has been tremendous. Carolina, we'll talk more about in the second period, but they're obviously less than they were before the Marty Necas trade, at least for this season. And the Devils without Jack Hughes, I don't have a lot of optimism for either Carolina or New Jersey. Obviously, they're going to face each other in the first round, it looks like, unless Columbus can maybe really come on late and who knows past New Jersey. But I don't have a lot of confidence in either Carolina or New Jersey at this point with injury and then, unfortunately for the Hurricanes, going for it and swinging and missing a bit. I'm not real high on either of those teams at this point.
I will say, I think in the long run, and the problem is, retaining some of the talent they have now. I think in the long run, I like Stankoven for Carolina. Again, another just offensive juggernaut. I don't want to say juggernaut, but a good offensive player that Dallas has churned out. And yeah, I think he fits in well with that team. We've already seen him score a goal with them. And I think he's made for the way that the Carolina Hurricanes play hockey. It's just he's still a very young man, and I think it's going to take a little bit for him to step into a Marty Necas type role. So yeah, I agree. I think this season I don't see them doing anything, and we'll see how they do retaining talent down the line. But I do think 2-3 years, Carolina is going to be very happy with Logan Stankoven. Just I don't think he's there yet.
Meanwhile, in the Atlantic, we talked about a potential Panthers Lightning matchup, but Florida is right now on top of the division with 83 points, 40-21-3 the record. They've got a 4-point lead on Toronto, and Toronto just has a 1-point lead on Tampa Bay. So things are still very much up in the air on the Atlantic. We shall see. It certainly appears that's your top three. What order they finish in, we'll see. But I like all three of those teams. Obviously, one of them is going to be out in the first round. But I think all three of those teams help themselves at the deadline. We'll talk more about it in the second period. But I like that top three. I could see any of those three advancing on to the Eastern Conference Final.
Sorry, Maple Leafs fans. I typically root against Toronto because I love chaos. And so seeing them lose every year has just been fun for me. But I will say, now they got my boy Craig Berube, and I think I'm rooting for him this year. How unfortunate for them that they have to play either Florida or Tampa in the first round, likely, and unless they can get that number one seed. But yeah, I think this is the year they get over the hump a bit. I don't know if they're going to be a Stanley Cup team, but I could see them at least getting past the second round this year, and I think that'll be huge for them if they can do so.
We shall see. It will not be an easy path out of the first round, I don't believe. But you've got Ottawa in there in the wild card mix with 69 points. Detroit has been sliding, but they're still in the mix with 66 points. Montreal, 66 points, and Boston has 66 points, but they're not out of it, but it would be very surprising considering what they've decided to do here recently if they are able to get into a wild card spot.
Agree.
Let us move over to the Western Conference and in the Pacific Division. Vegas with 82 points on top, 38-19-6 the record. 4-point lead on Edmonton, who has 78 points. The Kings are still in there in the mix with 75 points, 3 points back of Edmonton. They have a couple of games in hand on the Oilers and 2 head-to-head meetings, so those will be big. So we shall see. Both teams have been scuffling a bit of late. Calgary is hanging in there, and they've got 70 points. They're in fourth place. Vancouver in fifth place with 69 points. And then you've got the Ducks and the Kraken at 6 and 7. I don't think either of those teams are in the wild card mix at this point.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about the Central here in a minute, but the two teams that Blues fans are most concerned about are Calgary and Vancouver. So they're hoping to see those two teams lose. For a while there, it looked like LA potentially could have dropped out of 3. I think they were tied at one point with Vancouver or Calgary.
No.
Okay, well, either way, now they've got a 5-point lead. So I think as long as they play decent hockey down the stretch, they should be cemented there in the third spot and probably going to face Edmonton or Vegas in the first round, which will be tough. But yeah, Calgary and Vancouver are two teams that it's been interesting to watch how they manage going down the stretch for the wild card spot.
Yeah, LA had been scuffling recently. They've got a couple wins in a row, a bunch of home games to close it out where they've been really good at home. That's why I think that they'll be able to stick in that third spot. Maybe the
Good.
second spot if they can beat the Oilers head to head, but we'll see. Let's check out your Central Division where your Blues are. You've got Winnipeg leading the way, 92 points, 44-17 and 4 the record. They have a 6-point lead over Dallas. And then the Stars have 86 points. Then you've got Colorado with 78 points. Winnipeg didn't do much at the deadline. You could argue they didn't need to do much because they've been one of the top teams, if not the top team in the NHL all year. Looks like they're going to win the division. And then you've got Dallas and Colorado, who both did a lot of good work at the deadline to make themselves better. And again, you talk about a first-round matchup between those two teams. That is a really good hockey team that's going to be done in the first round of the playoffs. But that would be a must-watch series. That would be amazing. And of course, Mikko Rantanen against his old team.
Yep.
As a subplot. That'll be fantastic.
Yep, and that's what I'm hoping for. I do want to see that first round matchup. That's a matchup I don't think I miss a game because that will be a lot of fun to watch. Two very, very good teams. Minnesota in the fourth spot. They're again, sorry, Wild fans. I'm not a believer in Minnesota.
Well,
I think this team is destined to be knocked out in the first round, no matter who they play. I think they're getting there. They've got some talent in Brock Faber, Kirill Kaprizov, but it's just I'm not a believer.
Yeah, they've gone from second to third to fourth and don't seem to be trending in the right direction. But at the same time, I counted them out at the beginning of the year, so they still are hanging around. They're still still getting a chance there. Your Blues are they're in fifth place, 69 points, and we'll look at the wild card standings in a second. Utah in sixth, and Nashville and Chicago bringing up the rear there. Let's check out the wild card in the East. Right now, you've got Columbus and Ottawa as your two wild card teams. Blue Jackets have 70 points. The Senators have 69. The Rangers are 1 point out, but they do not have games in hand on either Ottawa or Columbus. Matter of fact, they played 64 games. Detroit is right behind them, 2 points back, 66 points. They've got a game in hand on the Rangers. And then Montreal and Boston and even the Islanders are still kind of there. We'll see. We shall see.
Yeah, this is an interesting race to watch. Again, Columbus and Ottawa, two teams that historically have not been known as excellent playoff teams. It'd be nice to see both of them get in and get a chance. The Rangers, I just don't understand the Rangers. This was a team that they did that rebuild a couple years ago. Now there are already talks of another rebuild. Interesting to see what they've done. I think if they get in the playoffs, they're a team you don't want to face in the first round, but you got to get in. You got to get past Ottawa or Columbus. And I don't know if they will. I really like the way Columbus and Ottawa have responded. And obviously Ottawa made a nice move at the deadline. So we'll see.
And in the West, I think very few teams in comparison to the East that are still in this. Utah, probably not. I think it's down to the three teams. I think it's between Calgary, Vancouver, and St. Louis. Right now, it's the Flames in the final wildcard spot with 70 points. Vancouver's 1 point back, and so is St. Louis. Now, the Canucks have played, or I should say the Blues have played 2 more games than both Calgary and Vancouver. But I think it's a 3-team race there. It's one of those 3 teams for the final wildcard spot in the West.
Yeah, and the Blues have played phenomenal hockey since the Four Nations break. So I've said now for about a month and a half, I feel like they control their own destiny. If they win the games because I think they got one more game against Vancouver, they're done against Calgary, which they beat them pretty much every time they played them, I think. And if they got to beat Utah, they're playing Utah, I think last game of the season. I think it's there for them for the taking. But they've got to start winning the big games, which they have. Utah is a team that I thought they were going to be making some noise the way they were playing there for a while. But there was some news today. I don't know if you have on Connor Ingram. that's going to
Yes.
affect their chances. And they're so hot and cold. There's sometimes they look like world beaters, and there's other games where they'll get shut out 4-0. So I'm with you. I think Utah's done, but a good season overall for their first year.
Connor Ingram, the backup goalie in Utah, stepping away for personal reasons in entering the assistance program there.
Yep.
All right, so there you have it. That was the past week that was in the NHL, and a look at where we are in the standings. Should be a very interesting week going forward as well. That'll do it, though, for our first period of the YouTube show. If you enjoyed this and want to hear more, check out the podcast. Search on Apple Podcasts and Spotify for Puck Podcast. We'll be talking about, again, if you want to hear our thoughts on some trade deadline moves, that's coming up in the second period, and then our listener emails in the third. So again, check that out. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm Eddie Garcia. In for Doug Stolhand, he is Jeff Ponder. And we'll talk to you next week with another edition of the Puck Podcast.
See ya.